The VCT Champions 2024 playoff stage has provided us with some incredible matches, some teams surprising us with how well they've played so far, some teams disappointing with how poorly they ended up playing. While all 6 games we're going to be talking about today were 2-0 victories by the victor, there still were some very incredible matches, and we have a lot to talk about. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are talking about the playoff stage of the VCT Champions 2024. This is the board we have today. We have the 6 matches that have happened so far, and getting right into it, we are starting with Sentinels versus DRX to kick off the stage. This was a 2-0 victory in favor of Sentinels, but DRX definitely did not make it easy for them. That first map being a highly contested, very back and forth map, both teams forcing the other team to play as well as they could have in that particular moment. Some very smart plays by both IGLs, but Sentinels ended up coming out on top in that first map, and they got it done on the second. DRX trying their best to please the home crowd, but they couldn't do it in this one. They would do it later, but not against Sentinels. Looking at map 1, we have Sunset, and as I said, this was a highly contested game. Ended up going into overtime 15-13 in favor of Sentinels, showing once again how good they can be on Sunset. Sentinels would take a pretty early 5-2 lead, but DRX would claw their way back to tie it at the half. Sentinels would get the lead once again, getting to 11 rounds, but DRX didn't make it stop there. 5 round wins in a row would get DRX to map point, but Sentinels ended up tying it. DRX would get the first round of overtime, but 3 in a row from Sen would end the match there. DRX would get the first round of overtime, but 3 in a row from Sentinels off the back of some incredible plays from Zekken and Tens would end the map there. Then looking at Haven, which was DRX's pick, which is kind of interesting. People were thinking that DRX was probably going to choose Abyss, which probably would have ended up being the better decision because Sentinels clearly had the advantage on Haven. And Abyss is a map that DRX has looked pretty solid on, and Sentinels haven't looked incredible on, at least from my memory. Anyways, Haven was the map and ended up being a 13-8 win in favor of Sentinels. Back and forth first half, tying the game once again, but DRX only able to get 2 on their attack side. Sentinels will just run away with it on their defense. Some very solid play on this match by Zekken on the Neon, getting 27 kills in this map for +11, and Zilsa's having a pretty solid map as well, 17 kills on the Breach. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of Sentinels, as I just mentioned, Zekken, he went 54, 39, and 15 for +15 during the entire match. As I said, playing on that Neon, showing that he can be a versatile duelist player. We hadn't seen him on Neon up until this point. And on the side of DRX, Flashback had himself a game, getting 39, 34, and 7 for +5. So a pretty solid match from DRX, but Sentinels would end up having the advantage in both player performance as well as the map pool. Definitely think Abyss should have been the map that DRX went to, but they thought that they would have the advantage on Haven, did not end up being the case. Sentinels continuing their strong play at this Champions 2024, not wanting to go out early, and because of this win, they got a couple days of rest, and they're playing tonight, so we'll see how that goes against Edward Gaming. Which brings us to Edward Gaming's 2-0 victory over Trace Esports. Yet again, EDG dominate teams in their own region. This is EDG's 5th victory in a row over Trace in 2024. Trace not even winning a single map against EDG. This is clearly a very bad matchup for them. I did pick Trace to win this game, thinking that maybe the powers of China would change and people were talking up Trace and how good they were because they beat Leviatan, but it seems like they ended up being the Billy Gaming of Champs 2023, where they win a couple matches, they look pretty good going into playoffs, but end up going out very early. And while map 2 would be a little bit closer than map 1, EDG was just always in the lead, which we can see right here. Map 1 was a 13-7 win in favor of Edward Gaming on Bind. 7 rounds in a row during that attack half for EDG. Trace would get 2 in a row, but ended up being a 10-2 half. Trace would have a pretty solid attack side for themselves, but Edward Gaming just needed the 3 and they would get it done. Nobody having himself a match on the get-go, 23 kills +12 for him. Then we would see a pretty similar story on Sunset as well, which was a 13-10 win in favor of Edward Gaming. So Trace would get 3 more rounds than they did in the previous map, but not enough to get anything going. 10-2 at the half in favor of Edward Gaming, just like map 1, and then Trace would start to mount a little bit of a comeback. 4 rounds in a row, broken by EDG, and then another 4 rounds, but EDG would get the last 2 that they needed off the back of some incredible play by Kane. Rating of 1.44, 28 kills on the Neon. Kane hasn't had the best tournament yet, but this match he definitely showed up in. Pretty unfortunate map by most of the players on Trace Esports. Kai doing the best with 19 kills plus 4 on the Cypher, but only 12 kills at a -6 for Fane F, who was playing Raze. Definitely not what you want from your duelist. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of EDG, Kane shows up, getting 47 kills, 31 deaths, 4 assists for +16. And for Trace Esports, we have Kai going 32, 29, and 6 for +3. Very unfortunate match from Trace Esports, a really bad draw from them, getting a team that typically beats them. Edward Gaming just stomping Trace Esports for the majority of this match. They only really got contested in the second half of Sunset, but it wouldn't really matter much because off of some pretty strong individual play and some pretty strong fundamentals, Edward Gaming would move on in the tournament. Trace would get bumped down to the lower bracket where they would face DRX, but we'll get to that match when we do. Moving on, we have the Americas matchup that ended up happening, Leviatan versus G2. This would be a 2-0 victory in favor of Leviatan, showing once again why they were the top seed out of the Americas. And of course, this match had the famous G2 jumping off of the map on Abyss.
To where you invest that the first time around.
Yeah.
And it really felt...
Last player standing. Flawless.
Hey.
That ended up causing a big storm on Twitter, and all I'm really going to say about that is if that makes you angry, you're overreacting. It was a strategy that G2 used so that Leviatan wouldn't be able to get ult orbs. Very similar to the team just kind of throwing the round and dying by the spike, but it hurts Leviatan's economy just a little bit. Overall, the strategy didn't really work. Leviatan ended up winning the match anyway, so I don't understand why this has caused such a storm on Twitter. I just think it's a funny moment, and it's a strategy that maybe we'll end up seeing more, but kind of doubtful because it didn't work for G2. They weren't throwing the game. It wasn't disrespectful to the esport. Lothar, you gotta calm down, man. That tweet was just... really? Come on. Anyways, overall, Leviatan were just outclassing G2 most of the time, having a pretty strong map pool in this match, winning on Icebox as they have done most of the times that they've played that map this year, as well as a strong performance on Abyss that sent G2 to the lower bracket. Looking at map 1, Icebox was a 16-14 win in favor of Leviatan, so this one would go into overtime, definitely very back and forth pendulum swinging kind of game. G2 with the early 6-1 lead, but Leviatan would crawl the way back a little bit, 8-4 at the half. Leviatan would win the pistol, they would get to their bonus, and G2 would break that streak a little bit, but another 4 in a row by Lev. They have the advantage on their attack side. G2 had to tie to bring it into overtime, which would be back and forth for the first 3 rounds, but Leviatan winning 3 in a row to close it out. G2 not getting what they would have wanted out of Icy, only 15 kills on the get-go. Calm having himself a pretty solid bounce back game though, 22 kills on the Sova. Moving on to Abyss, this was a 13-5 win in favor of Leviatan, so after that pretty close first map, they would just run away with this one. 2 separate 4-round win streaks for Leviatan would get them to 8-4 at the half, and G2 would only get 1 round win on their defense side. Icy yet again struggling, only getting 9 kills on the Yoru. Somehow he was second in rating. Don't really know how that happened, but overall a pretty abysmal map from G2. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of Leviatan, Calm, he must have heard me talking about him in the free agents video I did a couple days ago when I said probably he's gonna not be on Leviatan next year. Hey, maybe he heard that and reverse jinx. So Leviatan fans, you're welcome. Anyways, he got 42 kills, 26 deaths, 10 assists for +16. And on the side of G2, Jonah P going 34, 37, and 12 for -3. So very disappointing start to the playoff bracket for G2, not getting what you wanted out of it. Them just really not getting enough out of their players. They're a team that relies on the team overall playing very well, not individual performances. But when most of your players aren't playing well at that individual level, it's very unlikely that you're going to win that game. And Leviatan have players that can step up in big ways, as they did during this match. Moving on, we have Team Heretics versus Fnatic. This was a 2-0 victory in favor of Team Heretics, stomping Fnatic on the first map. However, Abyss would feature a pretty solid comeback from Fnatic, but it would end in Team Heretics getting the momentum back and closing out the match. Heretics trying their best to prove that they are the best team out of EMEA, and beating the other best team is a pretty good way to do it. Looking at map 1, we have Lotus, which was a 13-3 win in favor of Heretics. I don't understand Fnatic on Lotus. Last year they were probably the best team in the entire world on that map. This year, sometimes they look like they're back to that, and sometimes they just look lost and just get dominated. And this was one of those times. Team Heretics just outclassing Fnatic at every single part of this map. The only time this map was even competitive at all was at round 6 when it was tied 3-3. Other than that, Heretics were just just running away with this one quite easily. Woot having a very solid game on the Omen, getting 18 kills and only 5 deaths, plus 13 for him, and -7 for both Alpha Year and Chronicle. Not what you want from those two players. However, as I said, Abyss was a closer affair, this one going into overtime. It looked like Heretics was about to run away with this one easily as well, winning the first 5 rounds in a row, ending the half 9-3. But Fnatic started to remember who they were and brought this one all the way back to take the lead. However, they would lose it in round 24, and Team Heretics would win the only 2 rounds of overtime. While most of Team Heretics have minuses on the board, all of these players were stepping up when they needed to. Some incredibly clutch plays by Rhines, Mini Boo, Woot, Benji Fishy, and on the side of Fnatic, a really good map from Durka, Hero, and Chronicle, all showing just back and forth insane plays by both teams. It just ended up being too little too late for Fnatic, and Team Heretics took it home. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of Heretics, we have Rienz, who went 40, 25, and 10 for plus 15. He's having himself a tournament right now. And on the side of Fnatic, we have Durka, who went 41, 34, and 7 for plus 7. Very strong match by Team Heretics, wanting to go deep in this tournament, having to get past one of your regional rivals, doing it in pretty convincing fashion on the first map, and then avoiding disaster on the second. Fnatic definitely looking better by the end of this, and they would carry that into their match against G2, but they're now in the lower bracket, so there is no room for error for that team. Moving on to the second last match, we have DRX versus Trace Esports. This was a dominant, and I mean dominant, win in favor of DRX. 2-0 win, and Trace Esports only won 8 rounds total throughout this entire match. DRX giving the home crowd something to cheer for, and Trace Esports being yet another Chinese team that went out early. It's weird how bad Trace ended up looking during this playoff stage, because during the group stage, they looked really solid. It seems like a lot of people started to set their expectations pretty high for this team. I saw a lot of people picking them to make the top 3, top 4, and I never believed that. I did pick them to beat EEG because I thought, maybe China gets an upset, but this just showed that no one should have expected this team to go far. I apologize, China, but this team just wasn't it. Looking at map 1, we have Lotus, which was a 13-3 win in favor of DRX. Trace Esports just not able to get anything, especially on their defense side. DRX just running away with this one. 10-2 at the half, Trace Esports only get 1 on their attack side. -10 for Heibei, only 4 kills on the Viper. Viper's not meant to be the character that gets a lot of kills, but still, more than 4. That should be the standard. And then Abyss didn't get much better for Trace. This was a 13-5 win in favor of DRX, winning the first 7 rounds in a row, 9-3 at the half, not a curse anymore. 3 rounds in a row for DRX, 2 in a row for Trace, 1 more for DRX, and the match is over. Bane doing a really good job on the Sova, getting 18 kills for plus 7. Luo Kane trying his best, Kai doing a decent performance, but minuses for the rest of the Trace Esports players. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of DRX, we have Bane, who went 33, 17, 15 for plus 16, probably his best match of the tournament so far. And on the side of Trace, we have Fane F, I hope I'm saying that right, but he went 26, 26, and 4, 4-0. So Trace is out of the tournament, not winning a single map during the playoff stage. A far cry from how they looked in the group stage, being a pretty solid team in Leviatan. DRX continuing their strong play from the Sentinels match, but what's different about this one is that they were able to close this one out. Moving on, we have the last match of the day, and this was the NA Heartbreaker game, Fnatic 2-0 G2. Very disappointing result on the side of G2, not looking like the team that has looked so strong throughout this year. They got dominated on Haven, and then Bind was better for them, but it just was too little too late. Fnatic looking much better than their game against Team Heretics, showing that this team remembers who they are and where they have been in Valorant before. Fnatic just doesn't seem to be super consistent in this tournament right now, but in a do-or-die situation, Fnatic is pretty good. Looking at map 1, we have Haven, which was a 13-3 win in favor of Fnatic. They won the first 6 rounds in a row, and G2 would stop the bleeding a little bit, but the half would end at 9-3. And then, as the scoreline shows, Fnatic would not allow G2 to get another round. Most amount of kills on the side of G2 was Jonah P with 13, but everybody else having pretty abysmal numbers, specifically Icy, only 3 kills on the Yoru, -12 for him, whereas Alpha Year had himself a very solid game on the ISO, getting 24 kills for plus 17. Then Bind would be closer, and G2 would have a chance to win this one, but Fnatic just ripped it away at the last moment. 8-4 at the half for Fnatic, and G2 would crawl their way back by winning 4 in a row. So they would tie the game, but then Fnatic would take the lead right back, but then G2 would get to 11 rounds. They had the lead, they just had to win 2 more, but Fnatic would not allow that to happen 3 rounds in a row, and the match is over. Icy having a better map in this one, getting 15 kills, but still -3, whereas Chronicle, Durka, Alphair, very solid numbers from those 3 players. Looking at the team MVPs on the side of Fnatic, we have Alphair, who went 44, 23, and 5 for +21, and on the side of G2, not a lot of great performances, but Valen did go 22, 28, and 17 for -6. So this would end G2's run at Champions 2024, and it is very disappointing. I did pick this team to go to Grand Finals. I picked them to lose that Grand Finals, but even so, I expected them to go deeper than losing their first 2 matches. This team plays a very unique style of Valorant, and it's worked for them in the past, and I think it is a viable method, but did not work for them during this tournament. They looked very strong in the group stage, but pretty mediocre in the playoff stage, getting blown out on at least 2 maps. However, I am still very proud of what G2 was able to do this year. They won Ascension last year, and then they came into this year and defied expectations. Overall, having some pretty good performances on the international stage, notably getting top 3 at Shanghai. They just couldn't replicate that at Champions, but I do expect this team to come back in 2025 and probably look pretty good. Whereas Fnatic are starting to look more in their 2023 form, and hopefully for them, they can continue that strong play. They have gone on lower bracket runs before. We'll see how it ends up shaking up for that team, but don't count this team out just yet. So those are all the matches that we have to talk about today. Upcoming tonight is Sentinels versus Edward Gaming and Leviatan versus Heretics. I'm expecting Sentinels to win against EDG, and I'm expecting Heretics to win against Leviatan. But Leviatan have been a pretty good team, so I wouldn't be surprised. EDG definitely has the ability to upset Sentinels as well, so Sentinels, don't take them lightly. Anyways, that's all we have to talk about today. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of all these matches. Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.